What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. And joining me today, Jimmy Watkins, cleveland.com columnist, and Chris Fedor, cleveland.com Cavs beat reporter, and he's joining us from the 6. Chris, before we get into any breakdowns of anything we might have on the docket for today, there have been plenty of fans, plenty of listeners who've gotten the opportunity to hear you rave about getting to Toronto in the springtime. Now, you're in Toronto ahead of Game 3. What was it like? What did you get for dinner? Tell me about the trip. I want to know everything.
Toronto's just an amazing city, man. That's what it is. The restaurants are great. There's so much that you can do. Most of the times there's hockey going on or there's baseball. So there's something else that you can do. You can go to the top of the CN Tower and just get a great view of all of Canada. There's a lot of water that you can do running by. There's great walking in the downtown area. So there's just so much to do and there's so much to see, and there are great restaurants here. There's one of the best restaurants across this beat. We could talk about New York. We can talk about Chicago. We can talk about Los Angeles. One of the best restaurants, if you're covering the NBA, is here in Toronto. It's called Soto Soto. Here's how great it is. I called on Monday for a reservation for our big traveling party, and they didn't have anything. They didn't have anything Friday. They didn't have anything Saturday. So it has to be a Sunday night reservation after Game 4. But that's how great the restaurant is. It's so great that a couple of years ago when I was in the restaurant, I saw Drake, Mr. Canada. He was there. It's his go-to spot. Cavs players go there. Cavs coaches go there. Everybody knows about it. So I'm very, very excited about Sunday night's meal, the final meal that we're all going to have as a traveling party before we get out of here. Tonight was awesome. Got a nice meal with fellow reporters that made the trip to Toronto. Got some steak, Caesar salad, mashed potatoes, couple of appetizers. They all got wine. I got my sparkling water and whatever else was mixed in there too. So it's just a great city. And it's different. That's the other thing that you like about it. It's different because they have this thing called the path, which is basically you can walk indoors anywhere if it's too cold outside. You have the option to take this thing that's called the path, which is basically like an indoor walkway that extends throughout downtown Toronto. So if it's rainy, if it's cold, you just take the path and you can get anywhere you want to go, and you can still get the good restaurants. You can still get the good things when it comes to nightlife and whatnot. And here is the best thing about Toronto. The American dollar goes further here. So you get your bill from dinner or you get your bill from lunch and you look at it and you say, wait, that's Canadian money. So it's not nearly that expensive. The American dollar goes a lot further. It's great. You can get like a $70 meal for 40, 45, 50, something along those lines. And it's really, really good food. So there's just so many things to like about Toronto. And the atmosphere for a basketball game is really, really good too. When this team is playing well, the Raptors, and when the fan base is invested, you've got Jurassic Park outside, right outside the arena, and then inside, you have people that love the Raptors. They love basketball. It feels like a college environment almost. So many things to love about Toronto, and I'm sorry that you guys can't be here with me. Jimmy, are we going to lose you? I know it's draft eve, but you look exhausted already, my man.
There's a lot going on over here. Yeah, I'm tired. Battling through.
Well, Jimmy, we're glad to have you with us, and I want to toss a softball up to you because we've talked so much about the Cavs being able to just have control of the series. And obviously, as Chris mentioned, Scotiabank Arena gets raucous, and there's an understanding that the series doesn't truly begin until you go on the road as the leading team. So the Cavs have a 2-0 series lead. They're the only Eastern Conference team to win the first 2 games of the first round, but the series is just only beginning. Jimmy, is there a pathway for this Toronto Raptors team to work their way back into the series?
I mean, okay, there are steps that must be taken. The pathway is every single step being taken. So we can outline a few of those. Number one, Emmanuel quickly has to play. He's the best 3-point shooter on the team. The Raptors are offensively challenged enough as it is. With Emmanuel quickly in the lineup, they need him to come back. They need him to play in these games. They need the Cavs to play worse on the road, which tends to happen for role players. Play in the playoffs, your general rule of thumb, your role players play better at home. The Raptors need that. And your role players play worse on the road. The Raptors need that from the Cavs. I would say, unless you have to, no more Jakob Poeltl. There are like 7, 8 lineups that the Raptors have put together. None of them have played a number of possessions that it's meaningful data, but I'm just working with what I got here. A handful of lineups that have had positive net ratings in this series. None of them include Jakob Poeltl. They all include Mamu or Colin Murray Boyles playing center. I anticipate that adjustment. At the very least, we'll see a lot less Jakob Poeltl, if not no Jakob Poeltl. So there will be opportunities for Jared Allen and Evan Mobley going forward in this series. And the turnovers it's just a non-negotiable. Like to say, I don't even need to say you can't have 22 turnovers. Like it's a step further than that. The Raptors have to win the turnover battle decidedly. They have to win the possession battle decidedly in this series because the math is so swung against them, given that the Cavs get more threes up and shoot better percentage from three. Like that's their pathway to having a chance in any of the games in this series, let alone winning the series. You have to win the possession battle. You have to make the Cavs play your style, which I think we saw snippets of in game 2, stretches of in game 2. Again, maybe you being at home will help them do that, but like that's already a mouthful, and it feels like all, if not most if not all of those things need to happen all at once, because the Raptors have checked different boxes of those in the first 2 games of the series, and it just haven't been enough. They shot 48% from three in the first game, and they weren't close. They got blown out. They kept the score down. 115 for the Cavs is keeping the score down, but like the Cavs play a little bit more of the Raptors style in game 2. Raptors never had a lead because of all the turnovers they committed. So it's just like there's a lot that goes into this for Toronto to make it, but it all starts with a venue change. That's probably where the hope starts, is that the Cavs are in unfamiliar territory. The Raptors are feeling better about where they're at. They'll have a great home court advantage, and they'll be feeling desperate. So that's at least something.
Yeah, I was on a station in Toronto earlier today, and we were kind of going through all these different scenarios that could unfold as this series shifts to Toronto. And I just keep coming back to the same thing. I think the Raptors are going to need the Cavs' help to get back in this series and to be competitive and to be successful. And look, that can happen. It happens in the NBA a lot. The Celtics weren't their best the other night against Philadelphia. Look what happened. When did the Celtics score 97 points in a game? But they missed a bunch of threes. They stayed in drop coverage over and over and over again, and Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe cooked on that. So the 76ers got some help from the Celtics. The Celtics didn't play their best. They made some schematic errors, maybe some lineup questions from Joe Mazzulla. Derek White has been basically MIA in this series. Those things happen. It's basketball, right? So Donovan could be bad, theoretically. James Harden could be inefficient. The Cavs aren't making their threes. But I think a lot of what the Raptors need to happen ties back to the Cavs, and the Cavs having these outlier performances where they either just lay an egg, they're not focused, or they just have a bad night. Because if you go back to game 2, the Raptors did some good things. Bench scoring, fast break points. They won the rebounding battle. They won the offensive rebounding battle. They made a smart lineup decision at the start of the second half to bench Jakob Poeltl and go with Colin Murray Boyles. So they did some things that you would think would theoretically help them throughout the course of the series, staying competitive, maybe being successful, and they didn't lead at any point in game 2. So Brandon Ingram can play better. Like there are things, but again, I think a majority of them point back to they need the Cavs to not be at their best, or they need a lesser version of the Cavs than what they've seen in the first 2 games of this series. It's hard for me to say that the inconsistent Cavs are completely gone, right? Because we dealt with it throughout the course of the regular season. We saw so much inconsistency from them from an effort standpoint, from a tactical standpoint, from a habit standpoint. But it just seems like this team's really, really focused. And this team's really, really determined. And this team's really, really locked in. So I just have a hard time believing that the Cavs are just going to, because the series has shifted from Cleveland to Toronto, going into game 3, that the Cavs are just going to lay an egg. I find that hard to believe. And unless they do that, I don't think the Raptors can compete in this series.
Chris, I think it's extremely important that you mentioned that last part, right? Although this Cavs team has been inconsistent, has been sometimes lacking in areas of effort, and especially when we talk about the regular season, that's where that determination kind of lies. It's not waned over into the postseason. And I've heard it a couple of different times from Kenny Atkinson, and it's caught my ear every single time. He keeps calling this a veteran team. But at the beginning of this season, the Cleveland Cavaliers were a bunch of misfits trying to figure it out. Now they're a focused, well-oiled machine that is not satisfied or complacent with being up 2-0 because they have James Harden, because they have Max Strus, because they have Donovan Mitchell, because they have Dennis Schroeder. All guys who have either played or want to play in a high-level competition. And that desire is translating to everybody in the roster. And I think it's extremely interesting to continue to watch this kind of unfold because leadership and maturity and communication has been 3 of the biggest buzzwords from Kenny Atkinson, and it's because everybody understands what it's going to take. And that kind of looks around the NBA as a whole, right? Health is the biggest thing. You need to be healthy. You need to have everybody that's in your rotation available to you at all times. And we saw it recently with Victor Wembanyama going out with a concussion and having to go through concussion protocol, which calls for 48 hours of non-basketball activity. And that is a good thing for the Spurs that they're now traveling, so they have an extra day to kind of figure all of these things out, especially trying to figure out if Wemby's going to come back. Oklahoma City Thunder in the game tonight. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander injured his hand. How are you going to respond? How are you going to play through these things? And obviously, those are huge, but the consistent mindset of a team can sometimes overcome that if needed. Because if one player goes out, and especially with this Cavs team who threw 82 games, 41 different starting lineups, a whole lot of different depth rotational pieces, getting actual NBA minutes, you have an understanding of, okay, you're out, but you don't have to feel like you have to rush back because we can fill in. And I think the Cavs are in a beautiful spot when it comes to Jared Allen. We know you're not at 100%. You don't have to play 30 minutes. Evan Mobley, you're here. Dean Wade, you're here. You have James Harden guarding 4s, Max Strus guarding 4s. I think there's connectivity throughout the lineup, throughout the roster that simply hasn't been here in the Donovan Mitchell era.
I also think that when you get into a 7-game series, so much of this is about what weaknesses of the opponent can you exploit. And if we go back to before the Cavs made the trade for James Harden, there was an obvious one. And when you got into a playoff series, that was something that Kenny Atkinson was going to have to navigate. That's something that other teams in the past have had to navigate. The Cavs were going to go into a series where they had a huntable player. They don't have one of those on the roster right now. And I think it's making it very difficult for Toronto to figure out, okay, where are we going to go for reliable, consistent offense? Who are we going to try and attack on the Cavs defense? Or what aspect of the Cavs defense are we going to try and attack? And if it's not a player, it's the thing that has been problematic for the Cavs throughout the course of the season, which is the three-point shooting. But that's not what the Raptors do. So I think they're looking at this and they're saying, okay, what do we do here? Do we run our offense through Scotty Barnes? Do we run our offense through Brandon Ingram? Do we hope to get something out of Emmanuel quickly, even though he's dealing with a hamstring injury? He's probably not going to be able to hold up defensively. He's probably not going to have the same quickness. He's probably not going to have the same lateral agility. He's probably not going to be as effective as we probably need him to be in this particular series. So if you're Darko and you're trying to figure out, okay, this is the button that I'm going to push to try and get us back in this series, try to make this a series, try to make this competitive. I just don't know that he has a button to push. Whereas Kenny Atkinson, if the Raptors start to make adjustments and if they start to do, he'll have to push a button at some point, but to this point, he hasn't had to.
I think it's true that the Cavs are less huntable now, but I don't know. I think other teams are going to go after James Harden and they're going to make Donovan work in future series. I think the Raptors are. This is the theme we keep coming back to. It's like how much of this is the Cavs being so much better in the playoffs this year? How much of this is the Raptors just not being built for it? Like even when the Raptors get a matchup they like on a player who can work out, the Cavs can just be in the gaps. They can just say, don't even try it because we're gonna be here and we're gonna force you to make this pass. Like it's just a really hard. I do think, by the way, the Raptors could stand to game the matchups a little bit more for Brandon Ingram. Part of this is a credit to the way Dean Wade fights over screens.
Well, they're not giving up switches.
Right. I credit the Cavs for bucking a league-wide trend where it's like you look around the league sometimes and just like you're not going to fight at all. You're just going to accept that the other team wants your worst defender to guard their best player. You're just going to accept that. That's a strange one. The Cavs been good about fighting that. So that is a credit to them. But it's also in situations where they do have a disadvantageous matchup, that player on the ball knows I got a lot of help behind me in most of these lineups because, again, the Raptors just offer a lot of safe places for your defenders. And to that point, it offers a lot of opportunities for you to hide players. How many of these Toronto perimeter guys do you have to worry about? Even if you get cross-matched, I'm just not that worried about, like, even if Scotty Barnes gets a favorable matchup. He was bowling some dudes over. He's had some success against guys that weren't Evan Mobley in this series, but it's like the threat level is just never there with any of these Toronto guys. They're just not quite at that level yet.
And that's the thing. Yeah, maybe as series go on, teams say, we're going to make James Harden work on the defensive end of the floor. We're going to make Donovan Mitchell work on the defensive end of the floor. But you have to have the pieces on offense to do that with. And it's like, who on the Raptors will make James Harden work on the defensive end of the floor? Who on the Raptors will make Donovan work or go at Donovan? Is RJ Barrett attacking those guys relentlessly? What does that do? Is Jamal Shed going to attack Donovan Mitchell when Donovan's on the defensive? It's Jamal Shed. It's Jacoby Walter. You know what I'm saying? So it's one thing. Yeah, I wouldn't say that James Harden's the best defender in the NBA. I wouldn't say that Donovan Mitchell's the best defender in the NBA. But in this matchup, with what Toronto has offensively, those guys can more than hold their own. So that's where I keep coming back to, okay, what are they going to try and do going into Game 3? What adjustments are they going to try and make? What lineup changes are they going to make? And who are they going to find that can be a reliable, consistent source of offense for them? And I don't have a lot of answers if I'm looking at it from Toronto's perspective.
Yeah, guys, and I think the one thing that comes to mind that is the scariest thing, which isn't necessarily scary, is watching Scotty Barnes in that fourth quarter of game 2 say, "I don't really care anymore. Give me the ball. I'm getting downhill and I'm just running at you and I'm going to make you react to me." And it felt a lot like what had happened earlier into the season when the Cavs played Toronto and Scotty Barnes, and Scotty understood that he had a speed advantage over Evan Mobley, who was generally guarding him in those matchups. But how beneficial is that? How many opportunities are you going to get at doing that unless you're taking the ball out of the basket from after a Cavs make, or you're getting it off a live ball turnover when the Raptors literally have to look around and say, okay, where's Scotty? And the only person that we can have bring the ball up right now is Scotty. And that also allows the Cavs to then get back in transition defense and figure out where they're at. So I agree with you guys. I think live ball rebounds and live ball turnovers are the two main keys for the Cavs at avoiding them. And that also comes with making your shots and or minimizing mistakes on the offensive end. And I think Scotty Barnes is, again, not going to transition into being the head of the snake for this Toronto Raptors team. They're still going to focus on Brandon Ingram, but how aggressive he's going to come out in Toronto at Scotiabank Arena with the crowd behind him, I think it's something to watch because we've seen him be able to take advantage of that first step, that motion downhill, and all the things that he's so great at. But I'm wondering and curious to myself, even as I'm saying it, at how plausible that is in a 48-minute contest and how much that's going to wear on his body, because we already know how much he's going to have to do defensively guarding Donovan Mitchell, James Harden. And even if he gets a break because they're taking him out of the play, that's only for a few seconds. And then you have to get back to it and be the offensive hub or finding Brandon Ingram on that end of the floor as well.
The other thing to consider here is if they do go away from Poeltl, and all of the numbers indicate that they probably should, okay, now what does that mean for Jarrett Allen? What does that mean for Evan Mobley? They don't have any size. Who would be the biggest guy on the floor at that point for the Raptors? Scotty? Scotty Barnes? Man, it's really tough against a guy in Jarrett who, yeah, probably still a little bit limited because of the knee, but he was one of the best players in the Eastern Conference in the month of February. Now you're asking Colin Murray-Boyles, you're asking Mamu to deal with that. You're asking one of those guys to deal with Evan Mobley. It's just that's a hard way to go if you're a team like the Raptors. And we felt coming into this series, hey, the front court for the Cavs, Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen, they're going to be involved, but it's probably a little bit more James Harden, Donovan Mitchell driven. Well, James and Donovan could recognize, hey, that's Colin Murray-Boyles out there against Jarrett Allen. Here you go, Jarrett. Go feast. Here you go, Evan. Go feast.
It's also not like there's no trade-off here. The trade-off is on offense. On defense, it's not like, okay, we downsized in the front court. Now Donovan and James will be less effective because our defense, we can, I mean, in theory, yes, you could throw more Scotty at them. Well, actually, no, you can't, because now who's going to guard the bigs? It's not like there's no swing there. It's just like now the Cavs have even more potential offensive matchups to exploit there, and you're already getting absolutely killed by Donovan and James. It also feels it's like I don't know, it feels a little late. I'm interested in the idea, make Evan and Jarrett beat you more often. I'm interested in as a concept, because then, like, I don't know, maybe you can, if the Cavs are feeding them their mismatches so often, Donovan and James have less of a rhythm potentially later in the game. We're grasping at straws here, folks. They're already cruising to such a degree, their confidence is rolling at such a clip that it's like, now it just feels like you're piling on. You're adjusting in a way that makes life even harder on your defense, and life is really hard on your defense already.
The other thing that I was kicking around earlier is that, are they just going to be like, you know what, Dean, I understand what your shooting percentages are. I understand how good you've been as a three-point shooter since mid-December. Prove it on the road. It's not going to be the Isaac Okoro treatment, but that defender is going to be shaded more towards some of the other guys that we believe can beat us more. And I think if there's a component within the Cavs that you may be willing to test a little bit, it's the confidence of Dean Wade. It's the mental of Dean Wade. It's the willingness of taking open shots if those continue to come to him. So I wonder if going into game 3, the Raptors are just going to be like, you know what, dude? If you beat us on offense, combined with everything that you're doing on the defensive end of the floor to Brandon Ingram, good on you. Hat tip. And I just wonder if they're going to start not completely ignoring Dean Wade, but giving him a little less attention and putting more of that attention on somebody else and saying, if you're going to go on the road into Scotiabank Arena and make 5 threes against us that are a little bit more open than what we probably would be willing to give up, then so be it. But sometimes we have to take some of these bad options and hope that they actually turn out in our favor.
And another thing I would have liked to have seen earlier from them, to be honest with you, because Dean, and then again, in kind of a roundabout way, Dean's riding high right now. Dean's the guy that everyone's like, Donovan Mitchell and James Harden just stopped their exit in the press conference the other night to make sure that everyone praises Dean Wade in whatever they're writing or talking about the next day. Like, Dean Wade, even though he hasn't taken a ton of shots in this series, has got to be feeling great about himself right now. That's not to say that, a couple of misses still can't swing that a little bit. But the other thing is, like, Kenny Atkinson's feeling more confident in Dean Wade than ever. I feel like Dean Wade's minutes are probably less tied right now in this series to how he shoots the ball than they will be later on, just because he's been so important on the defensive end. And the Cavs have it scored so easily. I mean, we just talked about how one of the Raptors' adjustments might help them score even easier. So it's like, I think that what the Raptors failed to recognize entering this series is at just how significant a disadvantage they were at, And I know you got to try to play your game, but like your game doesn't match the style of the playoffs. The Cavs have a playoff tempo control master in James Harden. Like down 2-0 feels a little late to be making some of these adjustments. Like, don't guard Dean Wade. That's game one stuff. That's game one stuff. And I would extend it. I would extend it across like a lot of the rest. Like basically anyone not named Max Strus and Sam Merrill. Let's see what you got. Jalen Tyson, I know you shot 40 whatever percent in the regular season this year. Your role has been reduced. You've been hurt. It's a little funky. His first three was an air ball. Jalen Tyson is going to have a lot of room to shoot the rest of his playoff threes if I'm coaching that team. Just like, let's see. You might get burned on it. Okay, you got to try stuff. You got to look for every nook and cranny anywhere you can gain an advantage because this team is freaking loaded otherwise. And if you play their role players straight up, like we've seen it, Donovan and James are just going to eat.
I think that's a great point. And I think the biggest thing where I was going to pick at was how this kind of gets extrapolated over the rest of the roster, right? Dean Wade, sure, but Jalen Tyson, Keon Ellis, Dennis Schroeder, none of you guys are known for your mid-range jumper. You allow them to have a little bit more space. Where are you going? Now you have more opportunity to protect the rim, albeit you don't have the size of Jakob Poeltl. You still have Sandra Mamu. You still have B.I. You still have Scotty Barnes around the rim or closer to it to protect. But I do think that how Dennis Schroeder has shot the ball, the confidence of Keon Ellis, and obviously Jalen Tyson, and Kenny Atkinson continues to reiterate that he believes that Jalen Tyson is going to have a breakout game. That was his prediction at Cavs practice today, that Max Strus had a great game. The core four had a great game. Jalen Tyson is going to come around. He's going to figure out he's going to have a great game. And I think that's extremely telling of the confidence that Kenny Atkinson has, but also understanding that maybe he's predicting the game plan of the Toronto Raptors to give him more space. And Jalen Tyson's going to say, thank you very much. I'm still one of the top 5 3-point shooters in the league this year. I will take that space and I'm going to knock these down. And Jimmy, I think you're absolutely right. You can't leave Sam Merrill. You can't leave Max Strus. The gravity is too heavy and the shooting prowess is extremely there, right? But I do think that the role players, and that's what I wrote about for the site, the legacy of these players extends further than Donovan Mitchell and James Harden, but you have to have role players to win a championship series. And I think it's extremely important for this Cavs team to not only rely on them, but to understand how if Dean Wade's not making shots, but he's contributing defensively, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You just have to pick up the slack around him. And yes, that still means the role players who are going to come in and maybe pick up some of his minutes, depending on how that goes.
Yeah, but it's weird because I think the Raptors could see that as a win for them, a strategic win, because those shots aren't being taken by Donovan. Those shots aren't being taken by James Harden. They might be open threes, but it's Jalen Tyson. They might be open mid-range jumpers, but it's Dennis Schroeder. They might be open threes, but it's Keon Ellis. So I wonder if there's like a little bit of bait that is cast in game 3, especially early in game 3 of, here you go, you're open. Go ahead. Or making Dennis Schroeder think that he's more open and that it's good offense because it's an open shot. Or Dean Wade, it's good offense because it's an open shot. Or Keon Ellis, it's good offense because it's an open shot. Or Jalen Tyson is good offense because it's an open shot. In most cases it is. But those shots aren't being taken by Donovan and James. You might just say, all right, that's a win for us. We'd rather those guys get baited into that level of thinking and baited into those kinds of shots. It's so funny because so much of the conversation throughout the course of the year from the Cavs is what's the shot profile that we're willing to give up? It's maybe for the Raptors, it's not a specific shot profile. It's who's actually taking those shots. And will we live with those, even if they happen to be open ones? And I think if you're the Raptors, the answer should be yes. And just take your chances and see what happens. And maybe it turns into the Memphis Grizzlies when the Cavs were playing against them and they set a record for 3-pointers or whatever because they're just all open. But, what you've done in the first 2 games has not led you to success. You have trailed for 90 of the 96 minutes. So you might have to do something a little bit outside the box. And I think one of the things that they could do is bait some of these role players into thinking that they're actually getting good shots when maybe it's not the best thing for the Cavs offense for that to happen.
You're trying to increase variance. You want some randomness in the series, and if everyone plays to their averages, we've seen it. The Cavs are much better. So yeah, normally when you're talking shot profile, you're usually talking spots on the court. Do we want above the break threes? Do we want corner threes? Or do we want to be, how close do we want to be on some of these shooters? Now it's just like pick the players you want to shoot. That's where we're at. By the way, I think more likely than not, eventually, like you give Jalen Tyson enough shots, he's gonna knock them down.
Of course.
You give Keon Ellis enough shots, gonna knock him down. Like this strategy could result in 30-point loss, but it also has a better chance of giving you 4-point win, I think, than what you've been doing. Because Donovan and James, you just have no answers for them. So you need not only is it bait, it's also just like to survive. We've said Jakob Poeltl needs to hit the bench. So now your rim protectors are Mamu and 6'7" Colin Murray-Boyles. Again, I really like Colin Murray-Boyles. I think he is going to be a really good player in this league, especially on defense for a long time. But that's not enough. So you need to cut the drive off before those two get to the rim. There's your avenue right there. You can expect the Cavs to let those things fly tomorrow night.
Let's be clear here, right? We are reporters, analysts, columnists, podcasters, whatever you want to call us. We're not NBA level minds, right? When it comes to Darko, when it comes to his staff, when it comes to Kenny, who knows what adjustments they could make? It's about how each team responds and whether or not the Cavs are going to be able to handle a haymaker that Toronto throws at the beginning of the game. Who knows? Maybe Toronto gets out to a 12-2 run to start a contest in Scotiabank. That's going to carry more weight than it would have if they were in Rocket Arena. So again, response and how they're going to work through these adjustments is going to be extremely apparent. And obviously, both teams had an extra day to not only prepare, but to think about what their game plan is going to be going into game 3. So it'll be a lot of fun. And Chris, I am excited for you to be in Scotiabank Arena to experience that and to experience Toronto in springtime. We are all very happy that you got to experience that. Also, Jimmy, with the NFL draft. Oh my goodness. All on the same day. Let's hope Jordan Tyson gets drafted by the Browns and we can just all be done with it.
I also think there's a little curiosity here, guys, about how do the Cavs look on the road in the playoffs? Right? There has to be an element of that, given what happened last year against Indiana, given what happened a couple of years ago against the Orlando Magic, and we understand this is not the same team. These guys are older, they're wiser, they're more mature, they're more experienced. They have different pieces than some of the guys that were part of that series against Indiana, part of that series against Orlando. But there is an element of, all right, this group hasn't been on the road yet in the playoffs. What's it look like? How do they all handle it? Can they play with the same kind of way that they've been playing defensively? What is a little bit louder when the crowd's working against you, when it's harder to hear the calls from Jared Allen and Evan Mobley offensively, when, the Raptors are switching and trying to get them out of their offensive rhythm. It's a little bit different when you're playing at home versus on the road. So there is a level of curiosity that I have personally of seeing this group on the road for the first time in the playoffs. I think they'll handle it well because I think they have the right pieces and I think they have the right leaders for it. But you have to have a little bit of curiosity given the way things have transpired in the past.
Yeah, for all of our talk about adjustments, and we did a lot of gymnastics trying to figure out, a tactical way for the Raptors to guard this team. Sometimes, as coaches will tell you, the best adjustment is we play better. And I think, Darko, if I'm trying to get in the head of Darko coming out of game 2, it's like, well, we could have won that game if Brandon Ingram plays like Brandon Ingram. So maybe they just don't. Maybe they don't feel that same way. Maybe they don't feel like they need to try all this drastic stuff. And the Caps could, of course, play worse, as Chris alluded to at the top. That's the question that we're all looking for. Role players like Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, when their passive moments tend to occur a little bit more in hostile environments. The road crowd is more likely to give you a hostile environment. We'll see. I think the Cavs have a commanding advantage, and even if they do lose some of the juice from their supporting contributions, I feel like the top end talent can take them over the top in this situation where James and Donovan need to do more. It's not like these we haven't seen like a crazy 40 ball from either one of them yet. That's still in their bag. But it's a good point to just point out different venue. The Raptors will be better at home. They will be hungry. The Cavs were talking about that at practice today. They have to battle that, right? They have to battle that natural inclination to let your foot off the gas a little bit, even in the playoffs. That you cannot simulate the hunger of a team that's down 0-2 fighting for its life at home. You just can't. The Raptors will have that edge. I wouldn't be surprised if they come out with a bit of a run to start the game. Then we'll see what happens with the Cavs. That's the moment we're waiting for.
In all of this, the biggest thing that Jimmy just said, we'll see. And the Cavs need to prove it. They still need to prove that they can win on the road, right? They need to show us their capability of doing so. All the things that we said are true. The advantages, the disadvantages, the adjustments, the changes, all of that can come to fruition. But it depends on how the Cavs end up swinging the series in their favor, or if Toronto jumps back into this game or into this series with a win at home. We'll have to wait and see. And I cannot wait to do it with you guys and then talk about it all again tomorrow night. But with all that being said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs insider and interact with Chris, me, and Jimmy by subscribing to Subtext. Sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word STOP. It's easy, but we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me, Chris, and Jimmy. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.